This man is named Sagan. He almost lost his beautiful wife because he didn't speak up. The story begins a few days ago when a redhead girl was led into the forest by someone she knew. Unexpectedly, this person turned out to be a magician disguised as an acquaintance, intending to peel off her face alive for a ritual. The noise attracted the real master of the territory, Sagan. Upon seeing Sagan, the magician panicked and claimed they were fellow magicians, offering to share his research with Sagan. However, Sagan was not interested in research that involved skinning. In the presence of the redhead, he accidentally crushed the magician's head with his strong grip, knocking her unconscious. He quickly used a reversal spell to make it seem like nothing had happened. Unbeknownst to him, the girl was affiliated with the church, known enemies of magicians. Sagan initially planned to leave her on the streets, but his friend Bar intervened. Bar found it unusual that Sagan, a magician who could manipulate life and possibly live for 1,000 years, would disregard such a valuable subject. He also brought news of a powerful magician, known as a Demon King, who had died. This Demon King was not a demon, but a magician with immense magical power, who treated lower-level magicians as slaves. 13 such powerful magicians existed, including the oldest who had recently died. His belongings were to be auctioned off, and Bar, short on money, sought Sagan's help to buy something. On their way to the auction, they encountered church members. Bar mentioned recent cases of girl abductions by magicians likely experimenting on them, which Sagan scorned, suspecting absurd motives like summoning demons. However, Bar revealed that Sagan was the prime suspect in these cases. At the auction, Sagan noticed many powerful magicians, candidates to become the next Demon King, including Bar. The remaining 12 kings were still discussing who would be chosen. While the two talked, other magicians discussed them as well, acknowledging Bar's fame and surprisingly considering Sagan a candidate too. At the auction, the staff announced the start of the event. The first item up for bid was an order made by a deceased Demon King, which had never been delivered to him. When they revealed what it was, to everyone's surprise, it was an elf captured from the sacred lands in the north. A legendary creature. Elves are considered the closest beings to gods on this continent, and this elf girl with pure white hair was a rarity even among her kind. She could be used for magical experiments or as a slave, both highly valued uses. Yet, before the bidding could start, Sagan immediately offered 1 million. Bar was shocked. She wasn't worth that much. But Bar couldn't have known that Sagan had simply fallen in love at first sight with the white-haired elf. He thought Sagan had some special experiments in mind, especially when Sagan flashed a terrifying smile, causing a shiver to run through him. After winning the bid for the elf, Sagan jumped down eager to greet her. Unfortunately, he lacked finesse, which he would have known had he read more about the art of conversation. The staff informed him of the elf's powerful magic and their uncertainty about how to release her without the risk of her escaping. Sagan wanted to know if the elf could speak without harming her voice, blurting out, "It would be a headache if she couldn't produce beautiful sounds." This eerie comment made everyone tremble. Sagan named the elf girl Nephilia and took her back to his castle, filled with thoughts of how to start a conversation. However, the castle looked more like a torture chamber, and Sagan regretted not cleaning it first. To his surprise, Nephilia spoke first, asking how he planned to kill her so she could prepare herself. Sagan panicked and stood up, saying he couldn't bear if Nephilia died, but her gaze fell on the torture devices nearby, misunderstanding that he didn't plan to grant her a quick death. Sagan was flustered and couldn't explain that those were from the castle's former owner, and he just hadn't bothered to clean them up. He introduced himself, assuring her he had no interest in torture. It was then that Sagan learned Nephilia had no surname. Regardless, he found her name adorable. Nephilia revealed she was considered a cursed child by her people, and misunderstood Sagan's interest in her purity for ritualistic purposes.
ご安心ください。私は処女です。
Nephilia then asked Sagan why he bought her. Embarrassed to admit his love at first sight, which sounded creepy, he was nervous, yet excited about living under the same roof as her. Despite his anxiety, Sagan composed himself and offered her the choice of a room. Nephilia didn't understand why he was doing this. Sagan realized that she must have been indoctrinated with the idea that slaves could be killed at any time. Coupled with her claim of being a cursed child, It seemed she had nowhere to return. This reminded Sagan of his past self. So, he told Nephilia he needed her, and urged her not to speak of death. He asked her to live for herself. When choosing her room, he thought of one with a nice view and asked if she was afraid of heights. Nephilia mistakenly thought she was to be hung and tortured. As Sagan led her upstairs to prevent her from falling, he was secretly pleased yet embarrassed as he held her hand. But when the door opened, there was a guillotine inside. Sagan quickly shut the door and destroyed the guillotine with a blast of magic. Nephilia was shocked, having never seen such powerful magic. However, gazing at the distant moon, she decided to stay in the room that Sagan had bombed because he chose it for her. While the bombed room was currently uninhabitable, Sagan had her sleep in the castle, staying nearby. Though eager, he worried about being disliked by Nephilia, and hence refrained from doing anything. Hungry, he went to find food. Discovering Nephilia awake, he quickly brought her breakfast. Due to his lack of recent social interaction, he struggled with how to greet her. Sagan couldn't understand when he had become such a useless person. Nephilia looked very nervous. She stated that as a slave, any food was fine, but the food seemed too coarse for an owner like Sagan. He then realized that what he was eating barely qualified as food, more like fodder, earning Nephilia's sympathetic gaze. Unaware of the taste of normal human food, Sagan was moved when Nephilia offered to cook, his face flushed with excitement at the thought of his crush's homemade meals. He immediately decided to take Nephilia shopping in town. However, on the ride, he remembered impulsively spending all his savings of 1 million at the auction. He needed to find a way to make money and regretted not robbing the coachman. Yet, he thought better of it, considering Nephilia's presence. Sagan even contemplated selling the castle and opening a restaurant with Nephilia. Turning around, he found the coachman being robbed. Annoyed that he hadn't acted yet, especially seeing Nephilia's fearful expression, Sagan suspected that this was how she had initially been captured. He protected Nephilia and easily dealt with the robbers. I didn't expect the other party to have hired a magician. The magician thought Sagan's intervention without any benefit was outrageous. Unfortunately for him, he was no match for Sagan. He quickly lost control of the magic circle, and Sagan destroyed him effortlessly. Seeing this, the thieves dared not stay and fled immediately. Sagan naturally told Nephilia that the thieves were just insignificant minions. His intention was to keep Nephilia from being scared. However, Nephilia retorted that calling them minions after they had tried to rob a convoy seemed a bit of a stretch. This comment amused the rescued convoy members. The coachman remarked that there were good people among magicians too, and offered some money to hire Sagan as their guard. Sagan was surprised by how easy it was to earn money, and thought that maybe it was magicians like him who were the real villains. But this was the first time he had been thanked for his actions. He felt that Nephilia's presence must have brought this change. On the way, Nephilia asked Sagan why he helped them. Sagan saw this as a good opportunity to tell her he wanted to protect her, but instead, he blurted out that he just wanted these people to face reality. Frustrated, he cursed his tendency to be contrary. Sagan had intended to buy daily necessities for Nephilia, but was unsure what girls needed. He felt that Nephilia would accept anything he gave her. Seeing Nephilia stumbling behind him, he decided to buy her clothes first. The store owner, Manila, wasn't keen on magicians, but liked Nephilia's beautiful appearance. However, seeing her collar, Manila showed sympathy. Sagan noticed this look, but remembered the auction staff's warning that removing the collar might lead Nephilia to escape, making him hesitant. By then, Manila had already picked out some clothes, bold and wild styles, saying she thought Sagan would like them. Sagan blushed, unable to admit his preference, especially as Nephilia looked almost in tears. They eventually switched to a more modest maid outfit, though made from the finest materials. The boots even had healing magic to relieve leg fatigue. As Sagan and Nephilia were about to leave, Manila quietly told Nephilia that having an owner who cherished her was wonderful. Nephilia was stunned. Was she really treasured? What Nephilia didn't expect was that Sagan then took her to a craftsman to remove the collar around her neck. He said it reminded him of something a former demon lord would own. The craftsman informed them that the collar was a magical tool they couldn't remove and appeared to be booby-trapped. Removing it incorrectly could be fatal for Nephilia. The best way was to find the key. There was no key at the auction site. Sagan guessed it might be in the former Demon Lord's castle. The craftsmen clarified their confusion but refused to take Sagan's money. It turns out that Sagan had saved the craftsman and his daughter a year ago. It was their first encounter with a magician, and they were so terrified that they ran away. Now, they finally had the chance to thank him. However, Sagan did not remember this incident at all. Leaving the shop, Sagan felt uneasy. Everyone he met today was too friendly, making him a bit uncomfortable. Could this be Nephilia's influence? The craftsman knew how terrifying Sagan's eyes used to be. It seems Nephilia's presence has changed everything. Seeing that it was getting late, Sagan simply took Nephilia to a restaurant. Nephilia asked Sagan if he was not afraid that she might run away once the collar was removed. Sagan thought she might leave since she did not fall in love with him at first sight. Yet, he could not bring himself to say, "Even so, I still want to help you remove the collar." He just told her that it couldn't be removed right away. Sagan was very frustrated and wanted to buy a book on how to communicate with girls. Looking at the food on the table, Nephilia remembered her days with the elves. It was her first time sitting at a dining table like this. Sagan realized why he valued Nephilia so much. She was very much like his former self. Similarly, outcast and despised. Sagan urged Nephilia to try the food. Nephilia, unfamiliar with using a knife and fork, picked up a spoon and took a bite, quickly becoming captivated by the deliciousness. But Sagan's knife and fork skills were not much better. At that moment, Nephilia courageously used her spoon to feed Sagan. Sagan was shocked. He remembered that Nephilia had just used that spoon. Is this okay? Despite saying this, his body honestly accepted the food, and both avoided looking directly at each other. Nephilia expressed her desire to do something within her ability for Sagan. Sagan was happy, and then also fed Nephilia. Enough said, you two should just go get your certificate. Didn't you see the aunt and uncle next to you smiling like loving mothers? Meanwhile, the red-haired girl previously saved by Sagan is actually a knight of the church. They were originally tasked with subduing a group of magicians who assaulted women. Unexpectedly, they were attacked by a magician disguised as their ally. The red-haired girl, Shesti, found Sagan's eyes fierce, yet somewhat lonely. After being rescued, she returned as a hero. The Archbishop told Shesti that while investigating the group, they found that the real culprit behind the abductions was someone else. They suspected Sagan, the magician, was the real abductor. The Archbishop stated that even if Sagan was not the culprit, as a magician, he was still a target for their crusade. Sagan dreamed of his childhood when he was captured by a magician for experiments. Upon waking up, he saw Nephilia waiting for him and mustered the courage to say, "Good morning." At the restaurant, Sagan was surprised to find that Nephilia had cleaned and even baked fresh bread. He was stunned, as no one around him could make such delicious food. Noticing Nephilia's ears flutter joyfully when praised, Sagan invited her to eat with him. However, Nephilia had only prepared food and a chair for him. Sagan decided to share his meal and suggested she sit on his lap, which made him blush. Nephilia said it was impolite, but before Sagan could think, he blurted out, "If I say it's okay, then sit down." So she did, and as Sagan fed her, he asked her to remember to prepare her portion next time, although he didn't mind continuing this way. Nephilia also fed him soup, making it a hearty start to the day. While cleaning, Nephilia discovered Sagan studying magic. Despite her immense magical power, she couldn't use magic. Sagan explained that magic only requires internal power and the ability to form magical circles, but the strength of these circles depends on the magical circuit. Simple magical circles can be easily overtaken by enemy magicians. Nephilia wondered if inserting additional circuits within a magic circle was possible, but Sagan said it was risky as it could lead to loss of control unless the wielder precisely managed their magical power. He mentioned that achieving this would render all magic ineffective against them, theoretically making them the most powerful magician. Such research was rare, but Sagan was among the few who pursued it to prevent his magic from being taken by others. He had set numerous traps in his library, which Nephilia learned did not affect her, secretly delighting her. Curious, Nephilia asked Sagan about his ultimate goal in pursuing the pinnacle of magic. Sagan, not minding the question, shared that he learned magic to survive, as he had a harsh childhood and was once almost sacrificed by a magician before he managed to retaliate and realized he needed absolute power to live. His goal was simply to achieve immortality. Nephilia remarked that she had no grand ambitions. Sagan was about to teach her magic when he sensed someone invading his territory and asked Nephilia to prepare dinner first. At this time, Shesti had already breached the barrier with the paladins. Sagan noticed that Shesti was holding one of the 12 sacred swords, which had once slain the king of demons. Unexpectedly, it was in the hands of a young girl, whom he had previously saved. He regretted not restraining her earlier. 3 other knights charged at Sagan but were easily defeated by him. He warned Shesti not to act rashly, threatening to crush their heads if she did. Shesti thought Sagan was merely mocking his defeated enemies, but he explained that he needed them to spread fear. Killing them would only inform the church of their deaths, but he wanted them to personally convey the terror they experienced. Shesti suspected he was lying. Indeed, Sagan was concerned that Nephilia might be frightened by seeing corpses near the castle, so he hadn't finished them off decisively. Consequently, Shesti launched an attack, but Sagan did not retaliate, considering her strength negligible. Besides, Shesti was about the same age as Nephilia, and Sagan was reluctant to harm her. Shesti was upset because although Sagan had saved her, he was involved with magic, a power that often led to oppression and suffering. Sagan retorted that the strength of her paladins could also kill weak magicians and questioned the morality of those who oppress others. However, Sagan underestimated Shesti's power with the sacred sword and was quickly outmaneuvered. Shesti quietly told Sagan that he could pretend to be killed by her. As long as he lived, he would be a target for the church. If he faked his death and lived as a commoner, he might have a peaceful life. She remembered his kindness and his mercy toward the other knights. Sagan knew that a paladin helping a magician was a serious crime, and Shesti's suggestion was a significant decision. However, Sagan couldn't flee because Nephilia would be attacked. Just then, Nephilia sensed something wrong and rushed out. When a knight tried to attack her, Sagan blocked the damage. This angered Nephilia, who almost strangled the knights with vines until Sagan intervened. Nephilia seemed terrified of her own power. Sagan was curious about the nature of Nephilia's power. She said it was not magic. To prevent her from thinking otherwise, Sagan quickly reassured her that no matter what, she was still Nephilia. Nephilia was somewhat pleased, but worried that Sagan might find her frightening. Sagan said he had never seen this kind of power before, but he found it interesting. Nephilia hesitated before revealing that her power was called magic. There is a distinction between magic and sorcery. Sorcery is akin to science, requiring knowledge of various theories and definitions for use, while magic only needs prayer to influence everything and is a miracle beyond human comprehension. However, not all elves can use this power, which is why Nephilia is considered a cursed child. Elves rarely have children born with white hair, and Nephilia has always been treated as an outsider by her tribe. When the elves were attacked, the tribe leader asked her to use her power to protect them. This shattered her worldview, and she was captured without resistance, watching her people being slaughtered. Since elf corpses are valuable, she felt they deserved it, and even laughed. However, when she regained her senses, she realized how terrifying her thoughts were and chose not to show her emotions anymore. Sagan, rather than being disgusted, said that if he were Nephilia, he would kill both the invaders and the villagers. Jokingly, he added that as a sorcerer, having power is essential for survival. The villagers, who neither had the ability nor supported Nephilia, had no reason to live according to him. He grew up fighting for survival and learned sorcery to avoid a tragic death. Now he needs Nephilia, who burst into tears upon hearing this. After crying, Nephilia noticed Sagan's wounds had healed, presumably by magic. That night, she shyly came over with a pillow, wanting to sleep together because there was only one bed in the castle. Sagan was touched by her innocence. However, he had to stay up as the castle's barrier core. Surprisingly, Nephilia offered her lap for him to rest on. Sagan was secretly pleased, although he didn't know where to look given the awkwardness of the situation. Nephilia wanted to do something for Sagan, who said she had done enough and asked if she wanted to learn sorcery. Although he couldn't guarantee mastery, self-defense seemed feasible. Nephilia expressed her desire to protect Sagan. He was relieved, but wished she would care more for herself, so he took her on as his apprentice. Nephilia told Sagan she knew people said he was heartless for saving someone without pitying the weak. She guessed that must have been hard for him. Embracing him tightly, she insisted that Sagan was not indifferent at all and had been very caring towards her. Sagan was nearly moved to tears, hoping such good days would last a lifetime. The next day, Bar arrived, surprised to find Sagan still alive, especially since the church had even sent the sacred sword maiden. He was even more shocked to see Nephilia alive. Wasn't she supposed to be a live sacrifice? Sagan explained he had taken Nephilia as his apprentice, which Bar assumed was for a magic requiring an elf's participation. Curious if they had used this power to defeat the sacred sword maiden, Bar asked if Sagan was aiming for the Demon King's position. Sagan indeed needed the key inside the Demon King's castle, and becoming the Demon King would protect Nephilia from further harm. He openly admitted this, though he knew he was less experienced and knowledgeable than many other candidates. But as long as he was alive, there was hope. Bar felt Sagan had developed feelings for Nephilia. When questioned, Sagan asked what was wrong with valuing his apprentice. Bar commented that Sagan still harbored human emotions. Nephilia thought they should be friends, noting Sagan seemed happy when they talked. However, Sagan himself was reluctant to admit this. Over the following period, Sagan taught Nephilia sorcery while managing household chores. Their time alone together was joyful, and Nephilia's emotions grew richer, although she still struggled to control magic. There was progress in sorcery, and all that remained was to obtain the key to the collar. Half a month after Nephilia arrived at the castle, Sagan received invitations from the other 12 Demon Kings to go to the previous Demon King's castle. There, he found all 12 waiting for him, their magical power immensely frightening. They seemed to consider him the youngest prospective Demon King, and even summoned the 13th Demon King's crest, asking if Sagan would accept it and become the 13th Demon King. Sagan was puzzled, aware of many stronger sorcerers. The 12 Demon Kings explained that while Sagan was indeed weaker, none of those sorcerers could kill him. The sorcerer Sagan had killed upon his magical awakening was extraordinarily powerful. Yet Sagan not only fought back, but also absorbed all his knowledge. His ability to instantly understand and see through magic was linked to his exceptional talent. The 12 Demon Kings believed Sagan would eventually become the most powerful sorcerer in history, so despite his current weakness, they were willing to choose him. Sagan was puzzled, realizing he could potentially seize the magic of the 12 Demon Kings. They acknowledged he could, but warned of a high cost. Revenge by a Demon King was not simple. He would lose the most important thing to him. To aspire to be a Demon King, one must be ready to embrace the darkness. Sagan had anticipated this, as he had become a magician to survive. Now he worried about involving Nephilia in such a life. After much hesitation, Sagan made a request and accepted the crest of the 13th Demon King, gaining a new title. When Sagan returned home, Nephilia welcomed him warmly. Considering his step into a darker world and Nephilia's newfound brightness, he did not want to drag her into it. Sagan revealed he had obtained the legacy of the previous 13 Demon Kings and used the key to unlock Nephilia's collar. However, he stated he had become a Demon King and no longer needed Nephilia. Shocked, Nephilia found herself expelled from the castle. Attempting to return, she realized her collar had been broken and felt abandoned, unable to even cry due to her overwhelming sadness. Shesti found Nephilia, and feeling worthless, Nephilia asked Shesti to end her life. Known in the town and recognized as a paladin, Shesti was mistaken for harassing Nephilia. Manila, from the clothing store, rushed to protect Nephilia, and the unfortunate Shesti was treated as a church lackey, facing public condemnation. Luckily, Nephilia clarified that Shesti had done nothing wrong. Shesti was just concerned about Nephilia. Manila took them to a restaurant. Shesti, reminded of a knight who now fears trees, looked at Nephilia with mixed feelings. Manila invited Nephilia to eat, and the meal tasted just like the dishes Nephilia had cooked for Sagan, causing her to burst into tears. Manila comforted them both, and the tearless Shesti was puzzled. After Nephilia explained her sudden expulsion, Shesti was indignant, having initially thought Sagan was a good person. It seemed Nephilia might have been used. However, Nephilia did not want anyone to speak ill of Sagan. Curious about what being a Demon King really meant, Manila explained that a Demon King is a top wielder of magic. Their city was once controlled by the 13th Demon King, under whom the public order was decent. After his death, unpleasant incidents like serial girl kidnappings occurred. Although rumors said the church had punished the kidnappers, Shesti did not reveal that the church leader had named Sagan as the culprit. Nephilia wondered why residents still disliked the church, and Manila mentioned that the church had imposed exorbitant donations under the guise of rescue fees, leaving Shesti unable to raise her head. Nephilia quickly pointed out that Shesti wasn't the one taking the money. Shesti remarked that Nephilia was truly a good person, which explained why Sagan had taken her in. However, the conversation shifted back to their duties as paladins, which included defeating demon kings. But with only 12 holy swords and 13 demon kings, Shesti joked about the poor math skills of the swordmaker. The church planned to attack any new demon king while they were still weak. Nephilia suspected that Sagan had abandoned her to avoid involving her in danger. Shesti asked Nephilia if Sagan was the type to kidnap others for sacrifices. Nephilia shook her head, stating that not only was he not like that, but he also saved people, even though she knew he did this to reassure her. To Shesti, Sagan seemed very lonely, a sentiment Nephilia had not expected others to notice. She believed Sagan now needed help, and without hesitation decided to return to the castle. In her view, Sagan might be strong, but that didn't mean he couldn't get hurt. Nephilia wanted to be his emotional support. Shesti also declared her intent to find the real kidnapper to lessen the blame on Sagan. Manila encouraged them to seek her help if they faced any difficulties, as they were now friends. Nephilia, delighted by her first true friendship, was playing around with them when 3 foolish knights approached. Unexpectedly, a magician targeted them. In a critical moment, Nephilia pushed Manila away, but she and Shesti were swept away by the magician. Sagan had thought Nephilia was popular enough in town to live well even without him. When the foolish knights pleaded with Sagan to spare Shesti, who had opposed the church's upper echelons to clear Sagan's name, Manila arrived just in time to inform Sagan that Nephilia and Shesti had been kidnapped by the magician. Sagan worried that intervening might signal to the magical world that Nephilia was his, but Manila scolded him for hesitating, reminding him that Nephilia had always wanted to be by his side. Realizing this, Sagan decided to make it known that Nephilia belonged to him, and that anyone who dared to harm her would pay a bloody price. He immediately activated a magical formation to rescue them, and invited Manila to join, asserting their friendship. The 3 foolish knights also insisted on joining. While Manila was concerned about not knowing who the perpetrator was, Sagan had already anticipated the magician's involvement, deeming him beyond help. When Nephilia awoke, she found her magic restricted due to the low natural forces in the area, and indeed, their captor was Bar. Nephilia didn't understand. Weren't they friends? Bar told her that the magician Sagan killed at age 8 was his teacher. However, he wasn't seeking revenge for his mentor. He even believed that if Sagan hadn't killed the teacher, he would have eventually done it himself. But Bar thought that the money Sagan used to buy Nephilia, along with the magic and castle he acquired, should all be his. Thus, he had been secretly provoking the church to act against Sagan, surprised by their incompetence. Shesti realized that Bar was the true culprit behind the kidnappings. Bar shook his head, stating the real criminal was still the face-peeling magician, but he indeed needed to conduct a grand ceremony to prove to the 12 demon kings that he was the rightful heir to the 13th. Nephilia countered by revealing that Sagan had already taken the position of the 13th demon king, which was why she had been abandoned. Bar was shocked. Not only had Sagan taken his property and ideas, but now the position of a demon king as well. He then dragged Nephilia to a magical circle, planning to use her as a sacrifice to complete the ritual, after which he wouldn't even need to fear the demon kings. Shesti tried to save Nephilia, but Bar insisted that she was the perfect tool for the ritual. Nephilia realized she had always been treated as a tool by others, except by Sagan. She declared her resolve to return to Sagan's side, no matter how he might reject her. She wanted to continue cooking for him and offering him comfort. She knew others might come who would value Sagan more, but she didn't want him to be alone any longer and refused to let anyone other than Sagan touch her. Just as Bar was about to act, Sagan arrived and interrupted him. Bar didn't understand how Sagan had noticed his deceit. Sagan explained that the face-peeling magician couldn't possibly have broken his barrier. Over the years, only Bar could freely enter his domain. Moreover, the magical fluctuations from Shesti and the face-peeling magician matched those from Bar. His title was Purgatory, and his specialties were shifting and summoning. It was clear to Sagan what was happening. Sagan wasn't concerned with why Bar hated him, but he wouldn't tolerate Nephilia getting hurt. He incapacitated Bar, breaking his arm and knee, then quickly freed Nephilia from her chains. Nephilia was more concerned with Sagan's emotional wounds than her own injuries. She didn't want him to be alone again. Bar was overwhelmed by this turn of events. No matter how many magical circles he released, they were instantly destroyed. Nephilia didn't understand what was happening. Sagan reminded her of his theory about the strongest magician. It was possible to counter an opponent's magic at the exact moment they cast it by throwing out the same magic to overlap with theirs. In a way, this put Sagan halfway to being invincible. Bar thought this technique was also part of his master's legacy, but Sagan told him it was impossible. If his teacher had that ability, he wouldn't have died. Sagan first used magic at age 8. Although he understood the composition of the magic circle, he couldn't replicate it. It was only when he was caught and acted in desperation that he accidentally cast the same magic. The two magic circles clashed, and Bar's teacher died instantly. Hearing this, Bar felt antagonized and immediately released a barrage of magic circles, all of which Sagan instantly dismantled. Many of these were magic Sagan had never seen before. Sagan said that even an amateur could do it if they timed it right. Studying magic should always be about striving for perfection. After all, Sagan didn't just read books. He also wrote papers. He was a real scholar, terrifyingly so. Since Sagan began his research, he hadn't left his home, not even returning to the orphan alley. Bar was the only one who would bother him incessantly. Even if Sagan was unwilling, Bar would persist and drag him out drinking. Bar said he was just curious about what such a young kid was up to. He then realized that Sagan had absorbed his magic. Sagan nodded in agreement, admitting it was typical of him, and casually informed Bar that after inheriting the position of Demon King, he was dubbed Magician Killer. Unfortunately, his talent was a natural counter to magicians. Bar, thrown out, finally realized that magicians can alter their physical strength, and Sagan's talent was exceptionally amplified. Did Bar even stand a chance? Bar declared he would never show up again, but Sagan seemed not ready to let him go, ending up using a friendship card. Sagan warned him with a punch, questioning whether magicians really had friends. However, he didn't really hit him, just scared Bar half to death, telling him it was all a joke since he kept Bar around to trick him into drinking. Furious, Bar vowed he'd kill Sagan, who was unfazed and simply told him to bring wine if he lost. Bar didn't understand why, as a magician, Sagan wouldn't eliminate his rivals. Sagan said he was, after all, a demon king. Why should he follow all the rules? He just wanted Nephilia to live in the sunlight. To do so, he only needed to control everyone. Bar, annoyed, said fine, but he'd have to beat him first. True, how could one be a demon king without arrogance? It seemed they had reconciled, but Sagan had punched too hard earlier, shattering the magic circle, and accidentally summoned the demonic tribe. The demonic race only exists in ancient legends on the continent. It is said to be a real race that gradually vanished over time. However, the magic sigils used by them, along with those of the church, were scripts left by gods or demons during the era of the demonic race. The summoned demon fainted Shesti on sight. Sagan recognized that it wasn't in its complete form, as it lacked a living sacrifice. Even so, its menacing presence terrified him, more than facing the 12 demon lords. Unexpectedly, the shadow demon knelt before Sagan in submission. Seeing the sigil glow, Sagan wondered what exactly he had inherited. He ordered the shadow to vanish quickly. The shadow responded, "Dude, are you insane?" Yet, it tearfully disappeared following the command. After the shadow vanished, the cave couldn't withstand the pressure and collapsed. Sagan forcibly dragged several people out. At the entrance, they met the nightly trio of dunces who took Shesti away, not forgetting to threaten as they left. Manila reminded Sagan to have a good talk with Nephilia before leaving. Seeing the shadow, Bar was thoroughly impressed and decided that living was better. He promised to bring wine as an apology next time, and hurried off. Now only Sagan and Nephilia were left alone, unsure of what to say. But Nephilia, the straightforward war goddess, expressed her desire to stay by Sagan's side. This ordeal made Nephilia stronger. and Sagan realized he should no longer run away. Their relationship should not just be master-servant or mentor-student. Thus, he knelt and confessed his feelings to Nephilia, struggling to say, "I like you," and finally blurting out that she was his for life and he'd never let her go. "Do you hear what you're saying? Is this a confession?" Unexpectedly, Nephilia was delighted and took out a collar, asking Sagan to put it on her, calling it their first bond. "Isn't this engagement ring a bit large?" They watched the sunrise together, and Nephilia asked, "If we're neither master and servant nor mentor and student, what are we?" Sagan blushed. Damn, he needed someone to teach him how to propose to an elf. With Sagan inheriting the position of Demon King, many in his domain discussed this. Former rivals did not regret it, and even thought this might bring significant changes. The residents' perception of Sagan improved because of Nephilia's presence. Everyone talked about the beautiful elf by his side. However, unwelcome guests appeared in the city. Meanwhile, Shesti still refused to attack Sagan, as he had saved her twice. She couldn't repay kindness with enmity. Because she spoke in favor of Sagan, the church froze her paladin status. Shesti suspected severe corruption within the church. The knightly trio continued to plead for Shesti, but she was already mentally prepared. Setting aside the sweet and lovely tales of Sagan and Nephilia, Shesti faces trial by the church for harboring the demon lord. Although the archbishop is willing to provide political protection, as Shesti, chosen by the Holy Sword and a paladin, should not logically be expelled, the church's corruption leaves them powerless. The archbishop informs Shesti that one of the cruelest among the 12 paladins, having heard intelligence about Sagan, is already on his way, raising Shesti's concerns for Sagan and Nephilia. Meanwhile, after accidentally summoning demons previously, Sagan starts investigating the demon lord's mark on his hand, finding no clues from the former demon lord. During this time, Nephilia sneaks in, already noticed by Sagan. Her attempt to scare Sagan fails, and embarrassed, she remarks on how tired Sagan looks recently, suggesting he take a break. Overwhelmed by her cuteness, Sagan is then dragged to a restaurant where Nephilia has prepared a new dish she learned from Manila, a delicious pudding. The two indulge deeply as Nephilia shares her new culinary skills. While Sagan appreciates the beauty of the world and the soft, sweet taste of the pudding, they hear the barrier being broken. Ignoring the intrusion, they continue enjoying the dessert until the intruder, clad in lizard armor and a contender for Demon Lord, barges through the door, dodging all traps. Intent on challenging Sagan, the intruder nearly knocks over Sagan's pudding but is swiftly knocked out by Sagan's punch, revealing a green-haired young girl underneath the helmet. Realizing he has knocked out a young girl, Sagan panics and quickly arranges for her to rest in the guest room, with Nephilia smiling at Sagan's inherent kindness. The girl, Fawn, wakes up planning to attack, but Sagan easily blocks her and advises her to thank Nephilia, stating that without Nephilia's intervention, Fawn would have been dead. Despite his words, Sagan knows he would never commit such a bloody act in front of Nephilia. Confused, Fawn doesn't understand why Sagan, known as the Magician Killer, doesn't retaliate, given her belief that she could physically overpower him. Surprisingly, Sagan is not only strong, but also identifies Fawn's race as Draconic, a lineage thought extinct for a millennium. Noticing Fawn's guilty expression, reminiscent of his own past misadventures, Sagan empathizes and comes up with a punishment. Fawn must work for Nephilia for a week to understand the difference between right and wrong. If Fawn fails to show remorse, Sagan won't consider helping her further. Fawn asks Sagan in surprise if he isn't going to eat her. Shocked, Sagan responds, "Do I look like someone who would eat children?" Fawn explains that humans believe eating dragons can make them stronger. Sagan nods, acknowledging rumors that bathing in dragon's blood grants immortality and that every part of a dragon is considered a treasure. Despite these beliefs, he asserts that he is not so deranged as to harm a child. Seeing Fawn's pitiful look, Sagan recalls his own memories of being picked up by wandering companions. He asks Nephilia to bring the leftover food. Initially, Fawn refuses to accept the charity, but Sagan warns her not to waste food, especially not Nephilia's cooking, or he will slaughter her. Chastened, Fawn finds the food delicious and quickly finishes it. Sagan and Nephilia exchange a smile. Sagan stands up to return to his study, instructing Fawn to work alongside Nephilia. Fawn questions if Sagan isn't worried about her attacking Nephilia. Sagan replies that since Fawn knows his secret, Stepping outside would mean death for her, and he doubts she could defeat Nephilia anyway. Though he says this, he closely follows behind them, worried Fawn might actually harm Nephilia. Listening in, Sagan overhears Nephilia and Fawn chatting. Fawn admits she enjoys Nephilia's soup and even thinks Sagan would appear more manly if he smiled more fiercely. Eavesdropping, Sagan muses on the strange aesthetics of dragons. Fawn admits she's too intimidated to attack Sagan in front of Nephilia, who comments that Sagan is gentle and not prone to attacking others. Sagan thinks to himself that this isn't entirely true, as he has killed many magicians and thieves. Fawn admits she thinks Sagan is very strong. Nephilia asks Fawn what her plans are, and Fawn replies she wants to become stronger. Sagan remains curious about why Fawn, a dragon, would disguise herself as a human magician. At this moment, Fawn asks Nephilia why she stays with Sagan. Nephilia shares her story of being purchased and states that Sagan never treated her as a slave, which is why she wants to stay. She asks Fawn if she has nowhere she wants to stay, to which Fawn shakes her head, leaving Sagan and Nephilia in silent realization of her lack of a home. In the following days, Fawn lowers her guard and begins to earnestly cooperate with Nephilia at work. Meanwhile, Sagan continues his investigation into the demon race. Finding no clues in the books left by the former demon lord, he decides to visit the former demon lord's castle, suspecting that information has been deliberately concealed. Just then, Fawn comes to tell Sagan it's time to eat, noticing he doesn't guard against her. Recalling a friend's words, Sagan says he's always ready to accompany her. Touched, Fawn apologizes during the meal for disturbing him, acknowledging that it would indeed be frustrating to be interrupted while enjoying Nephilia's delicious cooking. At this time, Sagan tells Nephilia that he will bring Fawn with him to the Demon Lord's castle. Fawn is shocked, as this almost suggests that he will impart the knowledge of the Demon Lord to her, especially since he had just allowed her into the library. Fawn doesn't understand why Sagan doesn't simply use his power to subdue her. Sagan explains that doing so would upset Nephilia, and most importantly, he believes that children should behave like children and be free to be playful. Suddenly understanding, Fawn's eyes clear up and she bursts into tears, startling Sagan, who quickly pats her head. He also tells Fawn that if she sticks with them, no one would dare mess with a member of the Demon Lord's kin. Fawn, embarrassed, asks him to call her by her name. After relaxing, Fawn falls asleep after dinner, holding Sagan's hand and calling him father. This essentially makes her an adopted daughter. Sagan and Nephilia exchange a glance, both blushing, but neither wanting to let go of each other's hand. Fawn has recently started keeping an observation diary. She finds that her efforts earn Nephilia's praise. Her latest interest is studying the relationship between Sagan and Nephilia. She notices that Nephilia sneaks up to a sleeping Sagan every morning to watch him until she is content before leaving. Sagan spends his days in the library and teaches Nephilia magic hands-on when she visits. Fawn stumbles upon them hugging, and they shyly look away upon noticing her but do not punish her. Fawn finds them strange but still feels safe here, and tomorrow she will accompany Sagan to the Demon Lord's castle. Before departing, they take Fawn to Manila to buy clothes. Manila adores the cute Fawn, and Nephilia feels the trip was worthwhile, as Fawn seems to love her new outfit, and shyly thanks both of them. Sagan, feeling proud, gets his hands held by Fawn on each side. His feelings for Fawn and his tender affection for Nephilia are different, a protective instinct for a child. Meanwhile, Shesti has been stripped of her knighthood and struggles to delay any targeting of Sagan and his group. She knows Sagan will not thank her, but hopes to secretly support them, wishing for their happiness and family life. She imagines them offering flowers at her grave after she passes away, knowing Sagan would be a loving father. Then she looks up to see the two of them holding hands with Fawn, shocked. "You two have a child already?" Sagan and Nephilia blush, and he doesn't recognize Shesti until Nephilia explains who she is, since Shesti isn't wearing her knight's armor. At that moment, Shesti's foolish subordinate knights rushed over and hurriedly took Shesti away, saying it was too dangerous for her to act alone. Sagan restrained Fawn from attacking and mentioned that there were many of Nephilia's friends in the town, advising her not to strike out at people recklessly. Sagan knew it was risky for Shesti to be too close to them since it could endanger her. Fawn didn't understand. She thought it was normal for magicians and knights not to get along. However, Sagan was worried about potential accidents. Later, Sagan and his group reached the former Demon Lord's castle. Fawn sensed the presence of a dragon there and felt nostalgic. Sagan told her to inform him if she found anything related to dragons inside, and that she could also mention any books she wanted to take. The three then entered the castle. Nephilia clung to Sagan's clothes, and he simply took her hand. They walked deeper into the castle and encountered a guardian robot left by the previous demon lord. It was inactive due to lack of magic, and they dared not disturb it, fearing it might trigger its defense mechanisms. Fawn mentioned a dragon spell on the floor. Both praised her, and Sagan patted her head. Fawn said she could open a passage on the floor. When Sagan saw Nephilia's expectant face, he also patted her head. Fawn turned around to see the couple showing affection and was momentarily speechless. The trio followed the passage into an underground library, realizing that this was the real legacy of the former Demon Lord. They split up to search for books related to the Demon Lord's seal and demonkind. Fawn asked Sagan if he could read minds because Nephilia hadn't said anything. Yet Sagan seemed to know what she wanted. Sagan said Nephilia was very considerate, and it would be unfair to her if he didn't notice these small things. Fawn expressed her envy, and Sagan suddenly mentioned his long lifespan. Fawn was happy and said she wanted to stay with them. At that moment, Fawn found a book about the 12 holy swords. Sagan took a look and realized that the script on the Demon Lord's seal and the script on the swords were very similar, likely from the same source. This meant that investigating the holy swords could potentially unlock the secrets of the Demon Lord's seal. Elsewhere, Shesti met the Grand Knight Raphael. Raphael immediately asked Shesti how many magicians she had killed. Shesti, prepared, said it was not something to be proud of. Raphael found Shesti interesting, but still planned to kill her. The Archbishop intervened to stop him. Raphael argued that the holy sword would automatically choose its master, and if Shesti didn't die, the sword wouldn't choose another. Shesti stood her ground, saying that the sword's choice of master was based on their will, and those who abused the power of the holy sword were no different from tyrants. Raphael then drew his sword at Shesti and told the Archbishop that Shesti was disrespectful and would soon die unarmed as a knight. The Archbishop reluctantly decided to return the holy sword to Shesti, unsure if it was the right decision. Worried that Shesti might be challenged by Raphael, Shesti realized something was amiss. Raphael did not attack. His previous words and actions were merely a way to provoke the Archbishop into returning the holy sword to Shesti. Confused, Shesti returned to her room and found a letter on the table. After leaving the Demon Lord's castle, Sagan encountered Bar at the tavern. Bar laughed raucously upon hearing that Sagan had taken in another child. Surprisingly, Sagan admitted he knew the child. After some thought, Bar recalled the name Fawn, aware that she had attacked a castle recently and was rumored to be a dragon. However, he did not realize that the Fawn Sagan had taken in was the same one. Sagan felt Bar was either slow-witted or pretending to be oblivious. Bar had come to inform Sagan about a tough character from the church, a magician hunter named Raphael, who had killed 499 people and was known as the most ruthless holy sword bearer. Rumors suggested Raphael was after Sagan as his 500th victim and had consumed dragon flesh. Remembering Fawn's words and her hatred for the church, Bar suggested that it was better to be friends than enemies with Sagan, hoping to get some magical books in the process. Just then, Raphael entered the tavern, still chatting with Sagan, and Bar turned to see a scarred knight, nearly scaring him out of his wits. Raphael's presence caused the tavern's receptionist to faint and other patrons to flee in terror. Bar decided to strike first, but was thwarted by Sagan, who disrupted the magic circle. Confused, Bar heard Sagan say that Raphael bore no hostility, leading them to sit down for negotiations. Bar was trying to aid the unconscious receptionist, to which Sagan remarked that she was just fainted and didn't need rescuing. Sagan addressed Raphael as the Dragon Slayer, which Raphael did not deny, mentioning a friend cared for by Sagan. Sagan thought he meant Shesti. As Bar finished helping the receptionist and was about to leave, he heard Sagan ask Raphael if his hobby was hunting magicians and whether he would spare the two magicians present. Raphael responded that he had only quenched a spark, leading Sagan to feel that he was different from the rumors. Raphael then asked Sagan about Shesti's abilities. Sagan praised Shesti's skills, prompting Raphael to assert that Shesti should not be spared. He also mentioned that Shesti openly opposed fighting against the Demon Lord Sagan. Sagan became silent, thinking Raphael was seeking justification to kill Shesti. Remembering Nephilia and not wanting to upset her, Sagan warned Raphael that this was his territory and he would not tolerate any misbehavior. Raphael left the tavern without further comment. Bar tried to persuade Sagan to kill Raphael, but Sagan told Bar to do it himself. Bar, furious, exclaimed, "Do you really want me dead?" Sagan replied, "While I'd appreciate your earlier departure from this world, it's not to that extent." Bar, teary-eyed, was stopped by Sagan, who then asked him to check on Shesti, given his teleportation magic. Bar noted that Shesti was also a paladin and warned Sagan that he would regret sending him. After saying this, Bar left in haste. Sagan then realized he hadn't paid his bill. Returning home, Sagan found Nephilia and Fawn waiting for him. The latter was asleep. Nephilia mentioned that Fawn had been working hard cleaning the library for the past few days. Understanding the long lifespan of dragons and the depth of their bonds, Sagan knew the vengeance for Fawn's father was particularly profound. Thus, he decided to eliminate Raphael before he could find Fawn. While Sagan and Nephilia were chatting, creating a cozy atmosphere, they were about to kiss when they heard Bar's voice approaching. Bar almost got dragged out by Sagan for interrupting. Bar rushed in, carrying Shesti, and mentioned she had been poisoned. Nephilia immediately got up to help. Fawn, awakened by the noise and seeing the holy sword with Shesti, prepared to attack her but was stopped by Sagan, who clarified that Shesti was his guest. Fawn said the holder of the holy sword was her enemy, but Sagan explained that Shesti wasn't the murderer, and killing her would only bring pain to friends and joy to foes. Fawn felt misunderstood, but Sagan explained that true revenge involved tormenting the enemy into a state of fear and despair until they begged for death. This reverse psychology puzzled Fawn, who asked if Sagan had sought revenge. Sagan nodded, admitting that his quick act of killing his adversary meant his own revenge failed. Bar, standing nearby, asked that such things not be discussed in his presence since Sagan was his master. Sagan then offered to teach Fawn the true methods of revenge, mentioning that the castle was stocked with torture devices available anytime for her use. Bar was shocked, questioning if this was an appropriate lesson for a daughter. When Shesti awoke and saw Sagan, she was surprised but learned Nephilia had treated her. Shesti remembered being called away by a letter. The man in the cloak claimed to be from the church's coexistence faction. He said their goal was to control magicians, not kill them. Shesti had never seen him before, but felt he looked familiar. He invited Shesti to join the organization. Initially, Shesti thought he was sent by the Archbishop. The man suggested Shesti could think it over and left a name, Europa, saying it could protect her. After parting, Shesti thought about it deeply. She drank some tea in her room and then collapsed from poisoning. Fortunately, Bar teleported in just in time. Shesti suspected Raphael was behind it, but Sagan doubted it, saying Raphael would have directly attacked, not schemed. Sagan advised Shesti to rest. Shesti instinctively grabbed Sagan, wanting him to stay longer. Sagan thought she should say this to Nephilia, but considering the time, he didn't wake Nephilia and quietly read a book instead. Shesti pondered what she truly wanted, wishing for the couple's happiness, but unsure how to express it. The next day, Nephilia had her dress as a maid. Sagan made it clear that he was not one to let outsiders freeload. Shesti decided to work if she stayed, but noticed Fawn's hostility towards her. Sagan explained that Fawn's father was killed by a holy sword bearer. Shesti felt she should leave, but Sagan said Fawn's pride as a dragon wouldn't allow her to attack without reason, though it didn't stop Fawn from playing pranks. Shesti, struggling with the pranks, complained about Sagan spoiling Fawn. Sagan hadn't expected Shesti to be so helpless in everyday life. Although Shesti was pranked, she felt less tense than when she was poisoned. On her 10th day, Fawn thought Shesti was truly helpless, as she couldn't even avoid basic pranks. After spending more time together, Fawn started to pity Shesti. Meanwhile, Sagan decided to talk with Fawn. Elsewhere, Nephilia apologized to Shesti for Fawn's pranks. Shesti said she was used to them and remarked on the large bathhouse. Nephilia mentioned they had been bathing together, which led to a misunderstanding. Shesti was shocked to hear Nephilia talk about someone being needy during baths. It turned out Nephilia was referring to Fawn and hoped they could become friends. Realizing the ambiguity, Nephilia blushed. Sagan told Fawn not to overdo the pranks or waste food. He asked if Fawn wanted to continue living there, saying he and Nephilia would await her decision. Fawn was touched but had a dream that night. She dreamt of searching for her father and finding Raphael by his corpse. Unable to sleep, she went to Shesti's room, holding back due to a promise to Sagan. At that moment, Nephilia found Sagan and told him Fawn was missing. Fawn likes the castle and wants to stay with Nephilia and Sagan. However, she is not willing to give up on her quest for revenge. Thus, she ends her Demon Lord observation diary and leaves the castle under the cover of night. She heads to the Demon Lord's castle she had visited before, unaware that someone is following her. Her purpose is to find a way to defeat the bearer of the Holy Sword. Fawn feels like she is stealing by entering without Sagan's knowledge. Unexpectedly, Raphael appears behind her. Seeing him and the Holy Sword reminds her of his bloody face over her father's corpse, though Raphael seems not to remember her. Angry, Fawn immediately attacks him, but Raphael draws his sword in retaliation. Fearing death, Fawn is surprised when Sagan appears before her. Sagan sighs, telling her she can do what she wants, but staying up late is bad for her growth. Bar had teleported Sagan there. Sagan is indifferent to Fawn's betrayal, having anticipated her rebellious phase. Fawn bursts into tears in his arms. Raphael asks Sagan if he is meddling. Sagan declares Fawn is his daughter. Raphael looks complex, almost relieved, but then summons the Holy Sword, its power doubling when freed. Fawn doesn't understand why Sagan allows the sword to be freed. Sagan explains that true revenge involves crushing an opponent at full strength, thus humiliating Raphael. Raphael can't break through Sagan's magic, which has been enhanced based on a technique learned after a previous loss to Shesti, using the former Demon Lord's legacy. The shield withstands 3 strikes, but then shatters. Sagan, still contemplating how to strengthen his shield, knocks Raphael away with a punch, saying this demonstrates composure. As long as the opponent's flame is out, defeating a holy knight is easy. Fawn excitedly applauds. Sagan enjoys a moment of foolish parental pride, puzzled that Raphael still manages to get up, wondering what makes him so resilient. At this moment, Shesti arrives with the Holy Sword by Nephilia's side. Discovering that the teleportation portal left by Bar is still open, she finds Sagan and Raphael still battling. Shesti believes Fawn's departure must be because of her and wants to help, but she is unsure what to do, especially since she is still being pursued by the church. Should she help the magician against the church again? She feels very selfish. Nephilia is worried about Shesti's condition. Shesti admits she is envious of Nephilia, but Nephilia responds that she envies Shesti because Shesti can always go to Sagan's side to help, while she can only wait here for Sagan's return. Although she knows Sagan wants to protect her, she wishes to fight alongside him. Shesti, tearful, expresses her desire to help Sagan but is conflicted because the enemy is the church, yet they are also her saviors. She doesn't understand who she is meant to protect with the Holy Sword anymore. Nephilia tells Shesti she is gentle and can see the loneliness behind Sagan. Realizing Nephilia is comforting her, Shesti feels a bit embarrassed, especially when Nephilia calls them friends. Determined, Shesti resolves her confusion and jumps into the portal to support Sagan. Meanwhile, Raphael's wounds heal. Sagan tells Fawn that revenge can be a slow torment now, suggesting that consuming dragon's blood and flesh truly makes one stronger. Fawn tells Raphael that her father was her pride, and the Holy Knights killed him. The Sage Dragon, Europa. Sagan and Bar are shocked upon hearing this name, as it belongs to a legendary dragon that lived for 1,000 years. Fawn explains that her father used his knowledge to guide humanity, which is why he was known as the Sage Dragon. One day, a group of holy knights visited and spoke with her father, who then left with them and never returned. 7 days later, Fawn, unable to restrain herself, went looking for her father only to find him impaled by the Holy Sword and Raphael consuming his blood. Overwhelmed, Fawn faints and falls down a mountainside. Remembering her father's efforts to help humanity only to be betrayed by them fills her with horror. At this point, Raphael, realizing Fawn is Europa's daughter, rushes towards her. Sagan knocks Raphael away, but before he can act further, Fawn launches an attack on Raphael. Sagan is unable to intervene in time. After the explosion, Shesti appears, having blocked the attacks from both sides. She decides it's time to talk to Fawn, but not right now, as Bar remembers he forgot to close the teleportation portal. Sagan approaches Raphael and asks what he really intends to do. He is reluctant to attack someone who seems to have lost the will to fight. especially since Raphael no longer seemed intent on killing after hearing the name Europa. At this moment, Shesti suddenly realizes that the person who had come to talk to her earlier might have been Raphael. Before Raphael can explain, everyone senses a strange magical force and a huge monster, a puppet built to mimic demon tribes, and the same guardian puppet from before emerges. It seems the residual effects from the Holy Sword had activated the puppet. Bar is terrified. He only created a portal and did not intend to risk his life here. As the gargoyle launches its attack, Sagan instinctively pulls Shesti aside, but the attack heads towards Fawn instead. Surprisingly, Raphael steps in front of Fawn to protect her. Angered, Sagan reacts quickly and shatters the gargoyle with a punch, then checks Raphael's wound near his heart. Despite having consumed dragon's blood and flesh, the wound is severe and hard to heal. Raphael claims he was merely fulfilling his duty. Looking at the girl with eyes like the sage's, Raphael reveals the truth. He tells Fawn that Europa was not defeated by mere betrayal. It wasn't an ambush by humans. The reason they sought the sage dragon was because they faced a formidable enemy and needed the sage's help to defeat it. That enemy was a demon from legends. No one expected the demons to still exist. To defeat them, the church sacrificed many holy knights, and the sage dragon died in this battle. Raphael warns that the demons will return. Sagan adds that he has seen the demons and is searching for a way to fight them. Fawn is in disbelief, but Raphael assures her that her father did not die in vain and that she should not hate the enemy but be proud of her father, who protected her world. Raphael explains that the demons are too powerful, and with the church now fighting against magicians, humans stand little chance. Europa wanted Raphael to survive, so he allowed him to consume his blood and flesh, a fact unknown to Fawn at the time, leading to misunderstandings. Raphael hopes Shesti can take up his mantle, urging the church to end its millennia-long conflict with magicians. However, as he has killed many magicians, he cannot become a symbol of peace himself, which is why he needs to groom Shady as his successor. Just then, the gargoyle rises again. Sagan prepares to intervene, but Raphael mentions that the creature has demon blood and is the same demon he and the sage dragon had once defeated. It seems the previous demon king had recycled the demon's corpse for experiments, creating this monster. Some magicians truly deserve their fate, considering the mess left by this former demon king. Shesti decides to fight alongside Sagan as she is no longer confused. The Holy Sword has unleashed its power, and Shesti clears a path for Sagan. Sagan charges forward and shatters the gargoyle, but the real enemy turns out to be the black mist surrounding it. Shesti then slices through the debris. Sagan remarks that if Shesti had used this move when they first met, he might not have been able to defend against it. Sagan punches the statue, reversing the previous defensive magic by absorbing magic internally, causing the gargoyle to explode from within. Sagan notes that this move isn't very reliable and needs to be more efficient to combat demons. After this collaborative battle, Sagan and Shesti become friends. They then help Raphael treat his wounds. Raphael explains that the concept of symbiosis was proposed by the sage dragon, and his life was given by Europa. This is why he uses this title to recruit people. Sagan is puzzled why Raphael would promote symbiosis yet killed 499 magicians. Raphael is also perplexed, as he always tried to communicate gently with magicians who, for some reason, would attack first, as if they couldn't understand him, forcing him to fight and eventually kill them. It turns out that his fierce appearance led to misunderstandings, making him seem like a magician hunter. Sagan and Shesti are even more shocked because Raphael was very stern when they first met, leading to many misunderstandings due to his fierce look and poor communication skills. Raphael asks Shesti to return to the church, promising to deal with those who want to kill her. He knows Shesti probably realizes who the culprit is. Fawn stops Raphael to ask his opinion about Europa. Raphael says her father was a great dragon. Unsure whether to continue seeking revenge, Fawn is advised by Sagan to think it over. Sagan then goes home with his daughter and friend, where Nephilia has been waiting. Meanwhile, the Archbishop sends 3 foolish knights on a mission, revealing his true nature once they leave. He is a madman who believes all magicians and their helpers should die. He has been the one trying to kill Shesti. After a failed poisoning attempt, he prepares to strike again. However, Raphael, despite his severe injuries, confronts the Archbishop at the church. The Archbishop tries to poison Raphael during this opportunity, but Raphael cuts off his hand instead. Nervous about killing for the first time, Raphael believes the Archbishop, an old menace, should die quietly here, not corrupt the young. After dealing with the Archbishop, Raphael knows his own life is also near its end. Shesti realized that the Archbishop was indeed the culprit. Sagan criticized those who do as they please under the guise of justice, calling them the dirtiest people. Shesti acknowledged this but still planned to return to the church to serve as a knight defending justice. Before leaving, she drank tea brewed by Fawn. Although they still couldn't get along well, Fawn promised not to play tricks on her anymore. As Shesti was about to leave for the church, she encountered Raphael, who had recovered. It turns out that after Raphael killed the bishop, Nephilia healed him using the power of the elves. The tea she drank was actually brewed by Raphael, not Fawn. Seeing Raphael alive brought joy to Shesti, although she hadn't expected Raphael to fake his death and become Sagan's butler. Originally, Raphael intended for Fawn to take his head, but Fawn decided to have Raphael serve them instead. Since both looked rather fierce, Sagan couldn't bring himself to send Raphael away. Fawn even gave his old armor to Raphael. It turned out that Shesti was the only one leaving, but everyone welcomed her to visit again. After Shesti left, Bar woke up. Sagan entrusted him with protecting Shesti, as she seemed easy to deceive. Bar agreed to help in exchange for a magic book. When the affair concluded, Nephilia hugged Sagan's arm, and the two were getting cozy when Raphael covered Fawn's eyes, as he was still too young to see such scenes. Back home, Fawn started writing a new diary and observed Raphael in secret. Despite his fierce appearance, Raphael was an excellent cook and often fed Fawn desserts. Fawn couldn't understand why Raphael always interrupted when he observed Sagan and Nephilia, the couple. For instance, the day they made macarons, Sagan and Nephilia got affectionate, and Nephilia ended up feeding Sagan the treats. Raphael tried to cover Fawn's eyes, but Fawn was prepared and dodged. Raphael thought it was too early for Fawn to see such things. Fawn mocked the couple for being too innocent, joking that it might take decades before they kissed. After finishing his diary, Fawn went shopping with Nephilia and Sagan as Shesti was expected to visit. Nephilia decided to buy some ingredients, and the townspeople, no longer fearing Sagan the demon lord, saw them as a harmonious family of three. After shopping, Nephilia went to see Manila and brought her homemade treats. Manila was delighted and insisted on trying on new clothes with Nephilia. Meanwhile, Sagan noticed an old record player nearby. Manila explained that a local street kid thought it was valuable and had given it to her, but it was broken and couldn't play music. Despite this, Sagan bought the record player, confident he could fix it soon. On one side, Shesti and Bar had arrived at Sagan's house. Raphael greeted them briefly before leaving. Shesti and Bar chatted, both clearly lacking sleep. Just then, Sagan and his group hurried back. Shesti expressed her desire to help, having been overwhelmed with the Archbishop's duties lately. She was unaware that Bar had been secretly protecting her all this time. Beyond fighting, Shesti was quite helpless with daily tasks, even spilling ingredients upon handling them. Meanwhile, Bar found Sagan, who was repairing a record player, and complained that without supervision, Shesti might just outdo herself in foolishness. It turned out Shesti had accidents every night while sorting files, forcing Bar, who had been merely shadowing her for protection, to intervene and clean up, costing him much-needed sleep. Nephilia found the soup Shesti made nearly inedible and quickly made an excuse to send her off to rest. During dinner, Sagan unveiled the repaired record player, which could alter music according to the ambiance. Raphael noted he had seen this record player before, where many ladies and gentlemen danced, but was banned after one visit due to his intimidating appearance. During the meal, Shesti praised Nephilia's cooking. A drunk Bar loudly mocked Shesti's lack of discernment, revealing she slept with stuffed animals at night. Shesti was shocked, asking how he knew. They quickly interrupted the drunk Bar, not wanting to admit that Bar had been protecting Shesti. Bar then began describing his ideal type of girl. Fawn quietly served the soup Shesti made to Bar, who surprisingly found it flavorful, only to be knocked out by it a second later. Realizing her cooking was awful, Shesti was devastated and began crying, causing chaos. Later that night, Shesti went back to her room to rest. Despite claiming he didn't want to be Shesti's nanny, Bar followed her like a shadow. Sagan continued fixing the record player while Nephilia approached to inquire about it. Sagan wanted her to experience the music, reminiscing about his friends from the alley. He decided to return the record player to the alley once repaired. After fixing it, Nephilia couldn't help but sing along with the music. Sagan almost complimented her voice but recalled Raphael's dance, impulsively asking Nephilia to dance. Surprisingly, she agreed, but neither knew how to dance. Raphael tried to guide them, but to no avail, as they were too stiff. The next day, the town received the record player, sparking lively festivities. Whether they managed to dance remains unknown. In the final episode, the viewers wondered, why can't they just kiss already? Sagan, can you do it?